In what world is Sarah Strong number 3 in anything or Azzi Fudd number 39? We're about to find out next on the Hoops Cap.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.
Welcome to the Hoops Cap Pod. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. Here we are, the only men's and women's basketball coverage, the Hoops Cap Pod on Big East Energy Network. Daily coverage of both the men's and women's. Joining us today is someone who knows the women's game at a level most people never even get close to. Some fans may not agree with what we're about to talk about, but Kevin Clancy is a writer and analyst for Hoops HQ, and he spent more than a decade in the trenches of women's basketball, coaching, training, evaluating, and consulting across every level of the sport. He's worked at Mississippi State. He's worked at South Carolina. He's been a part of elite AAU programs. He's a proud USC alum, and now he's one of the sharpest voices in women's college basketball with a reputation for breaking down players through both film and advanced analytics. And Kevin ranked a couple of players in his top 50 that wrangled a few UConn folks. And I reached out to him because that stuff is very interesting to me, whether it's the analytical approach that I know the men's game is absolutely known for and the women's game is getting more into. And today we've got questions for him. So let's get into it. Here we go right now with Kevin Clancy. All right, here he is. Kevin, before we get into UConn versus the field, because I do want to ask you about their competition this year. The schedule isn't as robust as it has been. They got a couple big games coming up pretty soon. But I have to ask, I think you jumped on my radar. I'm a hoops junkie, so I'm on Hoops HQ. I look at all the different things that are going on. That's obviously Seth Davis's publication that you work for. And you did this article about rankings based off of different metrics, and you can explain that, that to us now, because we got, UConn fans up in arms about where Azzi is, where Sarah was ranked. And I reached out to you because I like to understand it from a level of, you did a project. I did the same thing on the men's side. There was a guy who ranked like Jim Calhoun, like the 12th ranked coach of all time. And I was just like, how could you do that? And so we had a conversation around it, and he gave me his explanation. So here's my very first question. We look at the metrics. How did you come up with this method to rank, Sarah third and Azzi Fudd 39?
You're good. Of course. Well, first off, thank you for having me on. I really liked our dialogue, going, like you alluded to, going back and forth, talking about it a little bit. So for those who don't know, I'll spill the beans. So men's fans a lot of your viewers are both men's, women's fans, certainly both powerhouses in the state of Connecticut. What I used was the Torvik system, right? So what I did was I looked at the players from 25. Like the assignment was to find the top 20 players actually. And then I added 5 because I thought there's so much great talent out there. The methodology was to go look at 25, sort them against top 50 competition, because to me, that's, you could play, a 340 team or something like that and go off, right? I want to see how you play against quad 1 and top quad 2 opponents. So I made the minimum 5 games played just to make sure there was no one-off player or anything like that. And then I went through the returners, right? Obviously, I still think Fudd's a great player. Having her at 39. Now, part of it was I included kids just to give a reference point, even though she's out for the year, and she was tied with another girl. Fudd was. So you could take 37. I'd be fine with that. The biggest part was just the number aspect of it. I mean, they were really bunched up from 31 to 40, right? It was very tough to decipher between the two. My thing was that if she had played in maybe to put up those numbers in previous seasons, I think she's probably ends up higher. But there's so much talent, and I think that with being regional in the way that we are, because everybody has their regions, their conferences, the people they see. For example, I talked about Washington and Ella Ladine and Savia Sellers, right? 2 really good players, but we don't see much of them because they play for UW. I did look at, and I actually have it pulled up. So was looking at Fudd from last season. I mean, obviously a terrific 3-point shooter, 36.6% in those games. Good assist turnover ratio, took care of the ball. The only sticking point with her that I think might help that might hurt her when it comes to the next level was the 5.5% defensive rebound rate, which was in the red. Doesn't mean she's not boxing out, and that doesn't mean she's not doing good things. But compared to some of these other players that were on that list, you had, for instance, and I'm checking it out now, but looking at those past players, you had kids like Peyton Verhulst, right? She was putting up some better numbers. Zoe Brooks, Silas Swords. I mentioned Ladine. Olivia Miles had some decent numbers. Toni Morgan had a defensive rebound rate of 13.9. So that was probably the biggest differentiator I saw.
Sure.
The other thing I noticed was that the 3-point shooting, I'm sorry to interrupt. The other thing I was going to say with the 3-point shooting, 36%, that's obviously, great for a team because that's over a 50% effective field goal percentage, right? But she was 26 of 71. And using Torvik, I looked up the kids who shot 71 threes or more and shot a higher clip, and there were 21 of them. So it was not enough to just carry the entire thing. In terms of strong, though, she was tied with, I believe it was Blake's. I flipped a coin. Honestly, you could have strong at 2. They were the same number. I think.
Can I stop you there before we get into Sarah on the AZ stuff? And this is where we can kind of get into a larger conversation about how metrics tell you a story, but they don't tell the whole story. Because to me, even if you did look at the 21 other players that shot it at a higher clip against the same type of competition, the idea that those players are being defended the exact same way as an Azzi Fudd, whose name recognition herself carries weight, and that type of recognition carries the type of, like, you just mentioned 2 players out of UW that you don't get to see. I guarantee you, if you put those 2 players on UW playing against UConn, they're going to be jacked up to play against in last year's team, which was Paige and Azzi, because they're playing against 2 of the stars of the game. So I think, to me, I think that part doesn't get the recognition that it should, because, like, you're going to close out harder against an Azzi Fudd than you are against almost any of the names that are ahead of her. Maybe with the exception of Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo, those players. There's just an aspect of this where, and I'll use something that from my own personal life. Like, I was a professional tennis player. If I was playing against a name brand, the reason why you play poorly sometimes or better against a name brand is because you kind of pump yourself up. You want to play at a higher level. So I think sometimes that can kind of get taken out of context, because, if I know AZ's open for 3 or in defensive rotation, I got to haul ass to get out there and get a hand in her face, or else it's buckets. So
sure.
Do you? I mean, I think
understand
that you've been around the game.
Of course. No, I think especially playing UConn. I've been on teams where they were on the schedule, and those were certainly the games. You didn't look at those the same, right? UConn was not the same as playing Kentucky. No offense to Kentucky, but some of those other opponents, right? You knew you were playing the elite of the elite, the cream of the crop. So I think there's certainly some value there. I also think that there are things that she might do, and this is for any player, right? That you talk about calling out screens, you talk about setting great screens, you talk about being a good teammate, you talk about deflections, right? Things like that don't get charted. I guess the basis of this article was just to find taking as much subjectivity out of it as possible, right? Sure. And no study is going to be perfect. I'll admit that. Like, I'm sure mine's not perfect as well. I just tried to combine effectiveness and efficiency. Effectiveness being the total numbers, right? Like, if you're doing it, 150 made threes versus 20 made threes, and then the efficiency part, the percentages, right? And I think in women's basketball, that's not being looked at as much as on the men's side yet.
I think you're right about that. I think you're right about that. But I'm only pushback I have, and then we'll get into Sarah on this, is because, like, if you just look at the top 50, you're kind of segregating the big part of the population, because let's face it, if I know that when we talk about the men's game, we can talk about the quad 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes you get these games that are in quad 2 that are, maybe as challenging as quad 1, depending on where they're played. But on the women's side, because the competition it's gotten better, it's gotten more wide net, but it's basically, I won't even put top 50. It's probably more top 30, top 40 are the really difficult games. Like the second weekend on is when things get really interesting in the women's game on the NCAA tournament. You can't say that on the men's side. But for me, it's like, if you're UConn and you're in the Big East, no disrespect to my brand of the Big East Energy Network, but on the women's side, it's not as competitive as the men. So like, it's you're kind of docking Sarah or Azzi based off of something that they can't control, which is playing a level of competition that isn't in the SEC or the Big Ten. But then if you did the NCAA tournament, those numbers are different. They played a lot better.
Oh, of course, especially the Final Four, most outstanding player, well deserved. Put up great numbers in those games. It was just hard to make a list in this way, if that makes sense. I wanted to give fans a different way to view it, maybe introduce some players they hadn't heard of yet.
I like that.
I love the idea of a top 30 because I think you're exactly right. Like a second round NCAA tournament game on the men's side, a 1 versus 8, for instance. The 8,
yeah.
I mean, we see it all the time. The 8 has, is typically like in that game. I mean, we saw it with St. John's against Arkansas last year, right? I mean, you could go through every single
UConn, Florida.
UConn, Florida. Yeah. Oh, that's right. UConn was right there, man. And so you don't really see that on the women's side. I can speak firsthand experience being at Mississippi State last year when we played Southern Cal and ran into a buzzsaw, even without Juju. So there's definitely a discrepancy there. I would agree with that. And it would be interesting to go back and look at just top 30 opponents. I think that's if I could do it again, I think I'd probably go look at it in those terms. It was just easier because the top 50 were already populated and it was just easier to find. But yeah, no, certainly. Yeah.
I think that's a good one too. And I also think maybe if you go into, because I think what on the women's game in particular, I think it would be really cool to look at the last, let's say like 10 Elite 8 on those games and essentially rank the best players of the last 20 years, just based off of their performances from maybe even the Sweet, maybe you go Sweet 16 if you want, because there were some upsets in Sweet 16s over the last few years. I think that would be really cool just to kind of get an idea of of how efficient, how the people that rose to the occasion in those events would be an interesting turnaround. Okay, so I think people get it. Like I think if you're watching this, I think you understand that Kevin's not a bad guy. He's not trying to shit on UConn. He's not trying to kill Azzi or please do not tweet at him anymore and say mean things to him, because he's just someone that's doing a project and it's and he based it off of a criteria. These were the numbers. That's life.
No, and a lot of respect for UConn, man, especially on the women's side. I mean, I was there when at South Carolina when they the Stewart years, when we went in there and just like I said, ran into a buzzsaw that first year in stores when they had lost to Stanford. I think it was a double overtime in November, I believe, and then I don't think we had lost. It was Asia's sophomore year, and we went in as the number 1 team in the country, and the fans let us know how they felt about that. And they, it was just Mosqueda Lewis went nuts, and but so I have a tremendous amount of respect for Gino and the program they built there, with Daly and everything they've done. So it was definitely not a slight. And I appreciate you saying that because there were some good. I think with the Connecticut fans, it was good discourse. People just wanted to know, like, hey, where is this at or whatever. You had your occasional person flying off, but that's Twitter. I'm used to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's Twitter's not real life. I think some people do tend to forget about that, but I think for me, it's a good exercise in understanding where you're coming from. But let's get into some basketball related outside of the metrics, outside of the article you wrote. When you look at this team and how it's constructed, and you've been around the game for a long time, who on this schedule, even if you just pull it up quickly, like I don't see a loss in the midst of this, because they're not playing South Carolina this year. They lost to UT last year, Tennessee. I call it UT because my wife calls it UT. I know people think that I'm talking about Texas, but I'm talking about Tennessee.
Now Longhorn fans are going to give you the Kevin Clancy treatment.
I'm gonna give them horns down. I don't care.
Please.
So my question to you is like, I don't see a regular season loss. I just don't. And
I
so
don't
what
either.
that would what that would mean is they're going into the tournament undefeated. And if they are, which are the teams that potentially could trip them up outside of South Carolina? We know South Carolina exists. We know that they're really good. Speak to the rest of the audience that is maybe going to look at, is it UCLA? Is it Texas? Is it LSU? Which of those groups, do you look at and say they have the potential to take down a Sarah Strong-led UConn team?
Absolutely. And I'm looking at the schedule right now. I don't think Utah will be a problem. I think Michigan with swords, they did give Carolina a game last year, early in the season.
That's a step up in competition. That's gonna be like kind of a wake-up call for them to see where they're truly at.
Absolutely. That's going to be a great one. And they're going to be prepared because that's the first one of the two. I don't think USC has the talent to hang with Strong. Same with Iowa. Going through it, I mean, Notre Dame, that's a home game. That crowd's going to be fired up, obviously.
Yep.
Tennessee is also at home. And then from there, it's Big 12 play. And, the best team would maybe be Creighton or Marquette, but Marquette just got the doors blown off of them by Minnesota. Over at
did
the
you
barn.
just have a Freudian slip and say Big 12 play? Like, are you breaking news that UConn is going to the Big 12 or the Big East?
Big East. I apologize.
No, it's fine.
You never know nowadays. I apologize.
Laugh.
Yeah, I know for sure. That was definitely a Freudian slip. Absolutely. I would say that. So I wrote about this the other day for Seth. I talked about how, and I'm actually going to go ahead and pull this up because it's a great stat. It's about Gino, Mulkey, and Dawn. Right. And if you look at the last, I want to make sure I have this correctly. So of the last 16 title games, one of those three coaches has appeared in 13 of those, including the last 4. So so out of respect, I would have to include LSU because I really like Johnson, the freshman they have over there. I think she's Sarah Strong light, if that makes sense. Like, she's not going to be as, pardon my strong, but she's also very, similar build, similar game style. I think that would be a really fun matchup to watch. I think UCLA has a lot of top shelf talent in the starting lineup. I think Lauren Betts is what makes her special. Is she's unselfish. She doesn't need the game to run through her, but she can also distort shots at the rim. They have a lot of shooters. Jaquez, Gianna, Kiki Rice running the show. I think that's one where if UCLA can stay out of foul trouble, that's an interesting fourth quarter because I don't think UCLA, even though they have Sienna Betts, who's out right now, I don't think they necessarily have the depth that UConn has with this team. Now, in the past, I think with UConn women's basketball, they've had, maybe 7 or 8 since Breonna Stewart, obviously. They've had like 7 or 8 that can really play. And Gino doesn't, even though he might have others that, could come in and do something, he sticks with that 7 or 6 or sometimes 6.
Right? I actually asked him that very similar question at Big East Media Day about because Chelsea Sherrod and I were having a conversation around is too many players. Is the media has media created like that question of, oh, it's such a great problem to have. You know what I mean? That whole idea of I have so many great players, right? So I asked him that question and he kind of chuckled and said, on the outside, we may look like we have 14 or 15 players that can play, but the reality is it's probably only 9 or 10. And then how good a season we have is going to be based off of how those 5 or 6 players react to them not getting minutes. So it's a really good answer from a coach. And so what that tells me is he's hopeful of getting to about a 9-person rotation, but but you know how this works as a coach, where you get into a game and you have your 8 that you're like, they're rock solid. And then you have maybe one that's kind of like gained your trust because they had a few games here and there where they had moments. So I think 6 or 7 is a stretch. That's only mostly because they've had injuries. A fully healthy UConn, he wants to have 8, maybe 9 tops. And I think that's going to be the kind of the golden rule.
You make a fantastic point though. And maybe it was Gino who said it, but the fact that you have 5 kids who are wondering about their minutes, right? Because they're all human, right? They're not robots. So people, some players will get disgruntled, some players won't, and then they don't meet their potential, right? So you have it's sort of who rises the cream of the crop, right? Who steps up, and that's sort of your 8th, 9th. And I'm sure he's hoping for that. The other teams that I would possibly consider would be A TCU team that just went into Raleigh and beat NC State, who has a
Yeah.
pretty good player in Tilda Triger, but TCU seems to have some really good pieces. I mean, and it's not just Miles, but I think like a Marta Suarez, a Kennedy Basham, who I tweeted about a few weeks ago, who just, she can shoot the three ball. She blocks a ton of shots. She's probably 6'8" with a longer wingspan. That kid coming off the bench, I think, will give them front court depth to be able to bang with Strong. Maybe now Strong's going to win that battle more often than not. However, they can at least throw bodies, right? They also have Clara Snow from Kentucky, who's 6'7", and then a few 6'8s off the bench that are just, in my opinion, too young. But because they can shoot the ball a little bit, they have some size. I'd throw TCU in there. UConn versus the field, if I had to grade it, if I had to put a line on it, I'd probably say -150, just because because some of these teams are going to beat each other up in the tournament. They won't necessarily play each of these gauntlet games, right? And if they can play 3 of them, I think they'd be favored in every game, certainly. It's just very tough to win all 3. Now, Gino's done it. This crew has done it. Obviously, last season, you saw we all saw what happened. I think at this stage of the season, though, given that we don't know if players get injured, things happen, and obviously pray for healthy season for everybody. But at the same time, that's probably how I would lay it out right now, just because. And then I think those are the contenders that can at least hang with them, and the reasons why I think they can hang with them.
Yeah, no, I think it's totally fair, and you make some good points. Last question, and then we'll let you get out of here, is UConn has, I don't want to say unveiled, but she's only played 2 games now, a shiny new toy that is just absolutely, first off, before, I think you know what I'm talking about. She's bigger than I thought. When you look at film of her before she arrived on campus, she, the stats were the stats, and she was playing overseas and whatnot. But Blanca Quiñones she's something else, man. I mean, her first real competition, against Ohio State, and she puts up 18. The biggest issue that she has, and I think the reason why she's not starting, and we got to get your take on this, is because, like we talked about, Gino has trust, that with the players that start. Ashlyn Shade's been with him now for her 3rd year. Started as a freshman, came off the bench last year. She's solid, and Blanca's flashy, but she turns the ball over a lot. So that's the biggest issue right now, is reining in some of that aggressiveness and some of the turnover prone. He made a comment. I think he said something like she leads the world in turnovers because she's from South America. And, that he's like, once that cleans up, and, she's going to do special things. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think especially scoring the ball. I mean, she's had a 60 so far this season, 65.6 effective field goal percentage, right? She's demonstrated the ability to shoot from 3 or 5 on the season. She's demonstrated the ability to score from 2, knock down free throws. The turnover rate, certainly high, but what I think is unique is sometimes it's about what team you're on, right? If she's playing for, I don't know, maybe just to give an example, like a Cal State Fullerton or someone like that, right? She might have to make some of those flashy plays and try to get those assists because the margin of error is, it's tighter there. Like, she has to make those plays. I think what she's going to learn is that when she's surrounded by a Sarah Williams, right? She has KK Arnold in the backcourt, Azzi in the backcourt. She has Sarah right there with her. Go inside to Jana. I'm a big fan of Kaylee Heckle too, man. I mean, if you go back
K9,
man, all-time nickname. If you can, because she plays like one. I mean, she's
a dog.
If you go back and watch absolutely, and you go back and watch that film against Mississippi State when Juju came out of the game, unfortunately to the ACL tear, and she was just able to play free with a lot of really good talent. I think that, to me, showed she's going to be scary if she goes to like a UConn or something like that. And then, of course, Gino read the room, made the right decision. And again, with Sarah helping out inside, he still has depth with Caroline down there, being a 6'2" senior herself.
Yeah.
I think Blanca will be a big difference maker for them. I think it's a matter of they just need to corral in the good things without the mistakes. And I think as she realizes how, like, the game will become easier for her as the season continues, and playing the good competition we talked about, with these out of conference games and whatnot, those are going to really show Gina what he has. And I think they're utilizing it right now. To your point, man, these teams don't know who she is. She's going against Ohio State. She's going against Louisville, and they don't know what to do. It's a plethora of riches for sure. And I think she's going to be, if they were to win the national title this year, which right now they're the odds-on favorite, she'll be a big reason why. You know what I mean?
I don't disagree. And I think honestly, if before we get Kevin out of here, the two things, I'm going to give you a fun stat that relates to the men and the women. The last time they both won the national championship was 2014. It's also the last time both teams beat a team from the New Haven area in Connecticut. And they both have won bye games essentially against New Haven teams. And I think it was in I think the stat is when the men play a New Haven team, that's the last time they won a national championship, the same year that they won the women as well. So it bodes well for the women, because the last time it happened in 2014, they beat Yale, and this year the men beat New Haven in their first year in Division I. Yeah. And the women are obviously ranked number 1 in the country right now. Men are 3rd. So it's a good time to be a Husky fan. Both programs are rolling, and on the women's side, I just think for them, they can go so much bigger at times, and they can also overwhelm you defensively.
Oh, and I think with the 6'2s that they have on the floor, and maybe not switching 1 to 4, but they can certainly switch 2 to 5. Depending on who's out there, or at least 3 to 5. Maybe you don't put Williams on a shooting guard, but you can switch so many different things, and it just allows you to get creative with the defensive matchups. If you want to blitz, if you want to hedge, if you want to really put pressure on their point guards, which that's going to be a fascinating matchup when they go up against Hidalgo, right, from Notre Dame. Using
that game frustrated the hell out of me last year. Just going under screens. I was like, it's like going like this and rubbing my neck. Like I couldn't be more upset during that game. Not because of, listen, Hannah Hidalgo is fantastic, but like if she makes shots, she makes shots. But you got to make a 5'6" point guard, get paint touches and actually get to the rim and get her points that way, not shooting behind screens.
Right. No question. I mean, and I think to another point, I think for a team to beat Connecticut, right, you're not going to, in the past, you might get them in foul trouble and then they play. Gino's not going to sub, but the players might play a little differently knowing they have 3-4 fouls since the third quarter. You can't get away with that anymore with this team. So I think you're going to have to play. You're going to have to make probably 9 to 10 threes at least. You're going to have to get to the line. And you have to hope for an off night. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, because even with we talked about like closing that Fudd hard. Well, if she blows by, first off, she's proven she can get inside and hit that mid range, or she can get to the rim, or she can distribute, right? So that opens up a whole can of worms. And at some point, you're just going to have to hope that they miss some shots. And then especially you're going to have to get offensive rebounds against Williams, who last year, a stat I had on her was, I think a quarter of the rebounds when she was on the floor were hers, which is incredible. And then you combine her with Jana and with some other players like that, and they're going to obviously play hard every night. That's going to be a really tough team to beat. I really think so.
All right, last fun question, non-basketball related. We're getting close to Thanksgiving. Don't know what you're doing, but I'm going to start asking any guest this question. What is your absolute must-have on Thanksgiving Day, food related, either entree, appetizer, or dessert? What's the number one Kevin Clancy go-to?
I like it. Well, if you look at me, you can tell I like to eat a lot of them. So I love to get in on it, but I'm going to give you a fun one. So my mom makes these yams, but the candied yams, but then they're glazed with bourbon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Being a Kentucky guy, right? You got to have some of that. That's probably and it's the only time of the year we ever make that or have it. So definitely putting that on the plate. I think, you got mashed potatoes is just rock solid. That's a great option. But yeah, I mean, I think just getting a little bit of everything, making the plate look colorful, the appearance, right? You don't want to be the guy who goes like 3-man rotation. You just have like turkey and hash. You want to pretty up the plate a little bit. So, are
you a turkey guy, or do you have a substitute protein in this holiday?
I roll with turkey. I mean, I've had it. I have some Southern family, so
Sure.
they'll actually fry it sometimes.
Oh, wow.
And that's definitely a unique taste to it. I've also have family from up in the DC area, and we've done a gluten-free one before, and really it's not as bad as you would think. So I've had a lot of different styles of turkey. I think that's my move, though. I'm not one to go chicken or ham. I save ham for Christmas. Ham's going to have your moment. Just wait a little bit in the season.
My wife is a ham. She's a ham and a ham, but we're definitely doing a ham. And because I can't do a big turkey and ham, I will probably do a beef tenderloin too. So there'll be a little steak on the plate as well. So we'll have ham and turkey and steak. So
that's a new one. A steak? I haven't heard steak. That might be.
It's like you basically do it. Last year we did a prime rib. This year I'm actually getting a whole tenderloin, which is like if you were to go to a fancy steakhouse, it would be like beef tenderloin. They cut it in thin or thick, however you want it. But that always goes well because if you're, like you mentioned, you definitely have mashed potatoes and gravy. If there's ham, my wife is Southern, so she's making, green bean casserole, that kind of thing. So yeah, honestly,
that's a sleeper. I forgot about green bean.
Absolute is the best. Green bean casserole, the way she makes it. Oof.
We're aligned on that, man. That's a classic. Yeah.
See, look at this. Making friends with people, even if they don't like your team. No, I'm kidding. Kevin did a great job. Kevin did a great job of explaining his methodology. He's a knowledgeable basketball guy. He's done, he's been on coaching staffs, done consulting. He's writing articles on Hoops HQ. So go give him a follow. Make sure you're being respectful of his take, and really appreciate you jumping on for a few minutes here.
Of course, man. And the other thing I'll mention is I love what you're doing with the sponsorships. 25% for those who don't know, go to the Boys and Girls Club Alliance of Connecticut. You're helping out your home state. Some really good people. It's a great cause, and I hope that some of these companies, local companies, are willing to step in and help out a great cause and a great podcast.
Well, I appreciate it. The men's side has already got some sponsorships. We're still looking for some folks to step up on the women's side. I think we're going to try to take care of that hopefully before Christmas. That QR code is a link if you're a regular person and you don't have a business and you just want to donate. There's a $10 a month recurring monthly donation to, and you can cancel at any time, but we really wanted people to kind of have some buy-in versus just, hey, I'm going to give $5 here and there. That's $10 a month. It's basically 2 Starbucks coffees. I think you won't miss it. So check that out.
I'll commit to throwing in 39 for Azzi.
Perfect. $39 for Kevin. And then he's going to add $3 for Sarah Strong. So it's actually 42. That's $42.99 from Kevin Clancy of Hoops HQ. We'll see you next time on the Hoops Guy.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Kevin for coming into the Lions Den today and breaking down his methodology, doing it so in a very concise and, I think we had a nice conversation, got some common ground, understood that obviously some fans took offense to that. And I think he really did a great job of breaking down his point of view and basically that it was strictly analytical, gave a lot of great praise to the UConn program, seeing it up close and personal when he was with South Carolina and Mississippi State. So, whether we agree with his assessment is really not for me to decide. I think that there's a lot more to the game than metrics. And so I think that's the challenge. And I think that conversation was well received. So I'll let the audience decide how they will react to it. And to everyone watching or listening, do us a huge favor, hit that like, subscribe button to this channel and download the audio versions wherever you get your podcasts. It helps the show more than you realize. Before we get out of here, if you're a business, remember, a minimum of 25% of every sponsorship on this network goes directly to the Connecticut Alliance of Boys and Girls Club. For larger partnerships, that donation goes up to 50%. When you work with us, you're not just supporting the show, you're helping kids across the state of Connecticut. And you're helping this big kid originally from the state of Connecticut. So that's going to do it today for the Hoops Cap. I'm Mark Zanetto. We'll see you next time. Be well.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it.